All right, let's talk about something that sounds incredibly complex, but is super important. EPF exemption. We're going on a bit of a quest today to understand the journey companies in India go through to manage their own employee retirement funds. It's a path filled with strict rules and a whole lot of approvals, so let's map it out together.
But first, you gotta ask the big question, right? Why would any company want to take on this massive responsibility? I mean, why go through all the trouble of managing your own retirement fund when you could just stick with the government-run EPF scheme? That's really the core of what we're digging into.
So here's our game plan. First, we'll look at why a company would even want an exemption. Then we'll see how they start the quest. After that, we'll face the 4-level approval gauntlet. Then we'll cover the rules for staying exempt. And finally, we'll hit the bottom line. You know, every big journey starts with that call to adventure. For a company, this is it. It's the moment they decide to take the reins and manage their own employees' retirement savings. And they do it for a few reasons. They might be thinking, hey, maybe we can get better investment returns than the standard EPF, or we can offer our employees faster, more personal service. It's really a strategic bet that they can deliver a better deal for their team.
So what is an EPF exemption officially? Well, think of it as a special permission slip. It's granted under Section 17 of the main EPF Act, and it lets a company create and run its very own Provident Fund trust. This means instead of sending all those contributions to the central EPFO, they get to manage the money themselves. And this right here is the golden rule. It's the one promise that underpins this entire process. Any private fund they set up has to provide benefits that are, and I quote, not less favorable to the employees. That's the absolute, non-negotiable floor designed to make sure nobody's retirement savings are put at risk.
Okay, so the company has answered the call. They've decided to go for it. How does this whole quest actually get started? Well, that brings us to step 2, getting the proposal ready. The adventure begins with what looks like a mountain of paperwork, all starting with Form GE1. But this isn't just about filling in some boxes. It's about proving you're actually ready for this. You need detailed trust rules, you need audited financial statements, and maybe most important of all, you need to show that a majority of your employees are actually on board with this change.
And the whole thing hinges on creating this, a Provident Fund Trust. It's not just some account. It's a formal legal entity, and it's run by a board of trustees or BOT. These are the guardians of the fund, a mix of people from the company and from the employees. And they become legally responsible for every single rupee.
All right, application's in. And now it enters what we're calling the 4-level gauntlet. This is where the proposal begins its long, tough journey through all the layers of the EPFO, the Employees Provident Fund Organization. Just look at this path. It's not a straight line, is it? Each stage is a filter. It starts at the regional office for intense scrutiny, then gets evaluated at the zonal office, and finally, it's reviewed by a committee at the head office. This whole process is designed to be tough, to make sure every single detail is checked before it even gets close to the government for that final stamp of approval. And the first gatekeeper you have to get past is the Regional Provident Fund Commissioner, the RPFC. This is the official whose team does the first and probably the most detailed review of that entire application packet. They check everything, and they are on a clock. There's a standard operating procedure in place, and it's pretty strict. The regional office gets a maximum of 10 weeks from the day they receive the application to finish their review and send their recommendation, whether it's a yes or a no up the ladder. And then, whoosh, the pace really picks up. Once the file gets to the next level, the zonal office, they only have 15 days to do their own evaluation and get it over to the head office. The system is built to keep things moving. And at the top, the head office has a target. They've got about 1 month to get that proposal in front of the Exempted Establishments Committee. You can think of them as the committee of experts who make the final, formal recommendation to the top brass. So, after surviving the entire gauntlet, you're left with 2 final decision makers. First, you have the EPFO's Central Board of Trustees, the CBT. They get the final recommendation. But the ultimate power, the final say, rests with what's called the appropriate government, which could be the central or a state government. They are the ones who grant the official exemption. Okay, so imagine, after all that, the company gets its exemption. The quest is over, right? Nope, not even close.
Now they have to live by the rules of a very, very exclusive club.
Yeah, staying exempt means following a strict set of commandments. You've got your do's, things like regular audits, transferring funds on time, and always matching or beating the EPF interest rate. And then you've got the big don'ts. These are absolute no-goes, like letting the fund's value drop, making risky investments, or changing the company's structure on the sly. And get this, if the fund loses money, the employer is on the hook to make up for every single loss.
And the guardians of the fund, that board of trustees, they have their own very specific job list. They have to meet at least once a quarter. They have to make sure all investments follow super strict government rules. They have to settle employee claims fast. And they're the ones responsible for sending those annual audit reports straight to the EPFO. So there's always oversight. Now, here is a really crucial financial rule for any new trust. All the past savings that employees had with the EPFO have to be transferred over. But here's the kicker. The transfer must be 100% in cash. They don't just hand over stocks or bonds. Why? Well, it's to make sure the new trust starts with a totally clean, liquid slate, free from any potentially risky assets. And that brings us to our final section, the bottom line. What are the real stakes here? What happens if one of these exempted companies messes up and doesn't follow these very strict rules? This number pretty much says it all. 3. If a company that's running its own fund reports financial losses for 3 years in a row, its exemption can be pulled. The government sees that kind of instability as a direct threat to employee savings, and they won't hesitate to act. And some things are even more immediate. If a company's legal status changes, say through a merger or a sale, the exemption is automatically, instantly revoked. Game over. The new company has to start the whole quest over from square one. That privilege does not transfer. And if there was ever any doubt about who's ultimately in charge, this quote clears it all up. Even with an exemption, that private trust is still accountable to the EPFO. It's not true independence. It's more like a license to operate, but with the government watchdog always looking over your shoulder. So it leaves us with this final question, doesn't it? Is this whole process just a massive bureaucratic burden, or is it an absolutely essential shield? I mean, it is without a doubt a difficult, complex process. But maybe the complexity is the shield. Maybe every form, every approval, every rule is just another layer of protection for an employee's life savings. For the system to truly be safe, maybe it just has to be this hard. Something to think about.